deaf grandma trapped as fire ravaged her home, until her hero dog's genius act was a miracle. The old two-story clapboard farmhouse, a relic from a simpler era, stood weathered and proud amidst the undulating expanse of the Texas hill country. Its faded white paint, cracked and peeling like old parchment, told tales of 100 harsh summers and just as many biting winter winds. This was the domain of 82-year-old Helen Carter, a woman whose spirit was as resilient and deeply rooted as the ancient live oak trees that dotted her sprawling property. She had shared this home with her beloved husband, Joe, for over half a century, their laughter and quiet conversations once echoing through its high-ceilinged rooms. Now, for a decade since Joe's passing, a different kind of quiet filled the house. A silence made profound by Helen's own encroaching deafness. Yet she was not entirely alone. Her constant, devoted companion, a shadow that moved with gentle purpose by her side, was Marley, a 3-year-old yellow Labrador retriever. Marley was not merely a pet. He was her ears, her alert system, her furry, four-legged connection to the world of sound she could no longer fully inhabit. Helen's hearing loss had been a slow, insidious thief, stealing away the melodies of her youth, the voices of loved ones, the subtle warnings of everyday life, leaving her in a muted world that often felt isolating. Marley, a gift from her daughter who lived 1,000 miles away, had been trained as a hearing assistance dog. He was a marvel of canine intelligence and Labrador empathy, attuned to the nuances of Helen's silent life. He would alert her with a gentle but insistent nudge of his wet nose or a soft paw on her arm to the ringing of the telephone she couldn't hear, the chime of the doorbell announcing an unexpected visitor, the beep of the microwave signaling her tea was ready, and most critically, the piercing shriek of the smoke detectors, which, for her, were also equipped with a flashing strobe light. More than his training, however, it was their unspoken bond that defined their existence. He was the warmth at her feet on cold nights, the eager companion on her slow, careful walks through the pastures, vibrant with blue bonnets and Indian paintbrushes, the soft head resting patiently on her lap as she read by the firelight. Helen, a woman of stoic independence and a wry, understated humor, often confided to her reflection, "That Marley, he understands more with his heart than most folks do with 2 good ears." She could not have known then how prophetic those words would prove to be, nor how Marley's profound understanding and almost unbelievable courage would soon be pitted against a terrifying, silent enemy. This unique and powerful connection, the silent language of love and trust between a vulnerable human and their devoted animal companion, is the very essence of the stories we cherish and share here on Lab of Love. If you too are moved by these incredible bonds and wish to witness more tales of animal intelligence, unwavering loyalty, and life-altering heroism, please take a moment right now to subscribe to our channel and make sure you click that notification bell. You are about to embark on a journey into the heart of one such extraordinary relationship, and what unfolds will surely leave you breathless. The night it happened began like any other unremarkable Tuesday in the sweltering heart of a Texas July. A dry electrical storm had rumbled far off on the western horizon earlier in the evening, a spectacular but impotent display of soundless lightning that offered no relief from the oppressive heat. Helen, following her well-worn routine, had secured the farmhouse for the night, checking the locks on the heavy oak doors, ensuring the windows were snug in their frames. She'd taken her evening medication, a small collection of pills for her arthritis and blood pressure, and sipped her customary cup of chamomile tea while Marley lay at her feet, his tail thumping a gentle rhythm on the polished pine floorboards of the cozy living room. After her final entry in her daily journal, a habit of 60 years, she made her slow, careful way up the creaking main staircase to her bedroom, Marley padding faithfully behind her. She was soon asleep, the old house wrapped in a profound stillness, save for the gentle whir of the ceiling fan in her bedroom, and Marley's soft, rhythmic breathing from his rug at the foot of her antique 4-poster bed. The moonlight, filtered through the swaying branches of a pecan tree outside her window, cast long, dancing shadows across the room, a familiar, comforting pattern. Downstairs in the seldom-used utility room tucked away behind the kitchen, a different, more sinister pattern was emerging. An ancient, humming refrigerator, a relic from Joe's parents' time, had been an accident waiting to happen. Its frayed and brittle wiring, stressed by years of use and the recent summer heat, finally succumbed. A tiny spark, almost invisible, leaped from a cracked insulator to a nearby accumulation of dust and cobwebs. It smoldered for a few minutes, a pinprick of malevolent orange in the darkness. Then, finding purchase on a forgotten stack of old farmers' almanacs, it tentatively blossomed into a small, hungry flame. The fire grew with an insidious patience, a silent predator in the sleeping house. It licked at the dry wooden shelves, climbed a set of old curtains, and began to feast on the aged, tinder-dry timbers of the old farmhouse walls. The air in the utility room grew thick and acrid, a smell that would have instantly alerted anyone with a working sense of smell. But Helen slept on, oblivious in her silent world. It was Marley, his senses 1,000 times more acute than any human's, who first registered the anomaly. He was in a deep, contented Labrador slumber, dreaming perhaps of chasing squirrels or a cooling dip in the stock tank. But a new scent, sharp and alien, began to penetrate his dreams. It was a smell unlike any of the familiar farm aromas of hay, earth, and old wood. It was acrid, biting, and carried with it an undertone of primal danger. He lifted his great yellow head, his ears, usually so relaxed in sleep, now swiveling, alert. A low, almost inaudible growl, more a vibration in his deep chest than a sound, escaped him. He rose from his rug, his movements fluid and silent, as smoke itself. He padded to the closed bedroom door, his nose pressed to the thin crack at the bottom. The scent was stronger here, unmistakable now. Smoke. And with it, a faint, almost imperceptible warmth radiating from the floorboards. His training, deeply ingrained, kicked in. Danger. Alert human. He turned back to the bed where Helen lay, a still figure under the patchwork quilt her grandmother had made. He nudged her arm with his wet nose, a gentle but firm pressure. She mumbled, "Is it morning already, Joe?" and turned over, pulling the quilt higher. Marley whined, a soft, anxious sound, and nudged her again, this time her cheek. He licked her hand. Helen sighed in her sleep but didn't wake. The specialized smoke detector in the upstairs hallway, the one with the powerful strobe light designed for Helen, suddenly burst into life, its brilliant white flashes cutting through the semi-darkness of the bedroom, reflecting off the mirror on her antique dresser. For Marley, this was the definitive signal. He intensified his efforts to wake Helen, now pawing at her shoulder with a gentle but insistent urgency, his whines growing louder, laced with a clear distress. All right, Marley, I'm coming, you impatient boy," Helen finally murmured, her voice thick with sleep. She fumbled for her glasses on the nightstand, her movements slow and stiff with age. As she sat up, pushing her thin silver hair from her eyes, she finally saw the rhythmic, pulsing flashes of light under the door and, more alarmingly, the first tendrils of grayish smoke beginning to curl into the room from the same space. A faint, unfamiliar smell, acrid and unsettling, finally registered even to her dulled senses. Fire, the word, unspoken, screamed through her mind. A jolt of pure, cold terror. "Oh, dear Lord in heaven," she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. She swung her legs stiff with arthritis over the side of the bed. Marley, seeing her finally alert to the danger, immediately began to tug gently but firmly at the sleeve of her flannel nightgown, pulling her towards the bedroom door, towards the main staircase, their only practiced escape route. But as they reached the landing at the top of the stairs, a terrifying wall of thick, black, choking smoke and intense heat billowed up from the ground floor. Helen recoiled, gasping, her eyes stinging. Through the swirling murk, she could see an angry orange-red glow flickering malevolently from the direction of the kitchen and utility room. The fire wasn't just starting. It was raging, consuming the heart of her home with terrifying speed. The main staircase, their familiar path to safety, was already a fiery, impassable inferno. Panic, stark and overwhelming, threatened to engulf Helen. She felt her knees buckle, her breath catching in her smoke-filled lungs. She leaned heavily on her old wooden walker, which Marley, with incredible foresight, had nudged insistently towards her as soon as she'd gotten out of bed. They were trapped. The heat was becoming unbearable, the smoke thicker with every passing second. This old house, her sanctuary for half a century, was rapidly becoming a funeral pyre. Marley, too, felt the searing heat, smelled the terrifying advance of the flames. He whined, a sound of pure, desperate anguish, looking from the fiery abyss below to Helen's pale, terrified face, then back again. His training screamed at him, lead to safety, primary exit. But the primary exit was now a gateway to hell. For a heart-stopping moment, the magnificent Labrador seemed to falter, his intelligent eyes darting around the smoke-filled landing, a visible conflict warring within him. Helen, coughing violently, clung to her walker, her eyes wide with a terror that mirrored his own. It was in these crucible moments, when instinct, training, and an almost unbelievable intelligence converge, that true heroes are forged. Marley was about to demonstrate that he was more than just a well-trained assistance dog. He was a thinking, problem-solving, life-saving force of nature. The situation looks utterly hopeless for Helen and Marley, trapped by a raging fire with no obvious way out. Marley's training points to a blocked path. What can a dog, even one as smart as Marley, possibly do against such a terrifying elemental force? If you're holding your breath, wondering if there's any hope, please hit that like button to show your support for these incredible animals who never give up. And tell us in the comments, do you believe animals possess a level of problem-solving intelligence that we often underestimate? We are about to witness Marley's answer. Then, with a sudden, decisive bark that cut through Helen's fear-induced paralysis, Marley did something utterly unexpected. Something that was not in any of his training manuals. Something that spoke of a profound understanding of the house's architecture and a desperate, brilliant improvisation. He stopped tugging Helen towards the inferno of the main staircase. Instead, he spun around, his body low and urgent, and raced towards the far end of the narrow upstairs hallway, towards Helen's small, cluttered sewing room. This room, seldom used except for storing old fabrics and Joe's collection of woodworking tools, had one crucial feature: a large, old-fashioned, double-hung window that overlooked the gently sloping, sturdy tin roof of the wide, wraparound porch that encircled the front and one side of the farmhouse. Marley barked sharply at that window, a series of short, commanding barks, then looked back at Helen, then at the window again, his meaning unmistakable even in the smoke-thickened air. He was indicating an alternative escape route. Helen, her mind reeling, coughing in fits, didn't immediately grasp his intention. The sewing room window? It was high, and the porch roof, even if they could reach it, was still a significant drop to the ground for an octogenarian with stiff joints. No, Marley, no. The back stairs. Maybe the back stairs, she rasped, thinking of the narrow, steep servants' staircase near the kitchen, likely also engulfed. But Marley was an immovable force of conviction. He ran back to her, nudged her walker with his head forcefully, insistently, in the direction of the sewing room. He then ran back to the window, stood on his hind legs, and began scratching at the painted wooden frame, whining with an almost unbearable urgency. He was not just suggesting, he was insisting. He had assessed the rapidly deteriorating situation, recognized the primary and secondary exits as death traps, and had identified a tertiary, unconventional, but potentially life-saving option. A flicker of understanding, then desperate hope, ignited in Helen's mind. The porch roof. Of course it was old like the rest of the house, but Joe had reinforced it years ago. It was wide, and from its edge the drop to the overgrown azalea bushes below, while daunting, was survivable, certainly more so than facing the inferno consuming the lower floor. She had to trust him. Marley had never, ever led her astray. With the Labrador now practically herding her with gentle but firm body blocks and encouraging whines, they made their slow, agonizing way into the sewing room. The smoke was thicker here too, seeping under the door, the smell acrid and terrifying. Helen, her eyes streaming, her lungs burning with each ragged breath, fumbled with the old stiff window latches. They wouldn't budge, painted shut over years of disuse. Marley, as if sensing her failing strength and the precious seconds ticking away, reared up again, his powerful front paws pushing against the lower sash of the window, his head a battering ram against the frame. He grunted with the effort, his muscles straining. Helen, inspired by his desperate strength, put her own frail shoulder into it. With a screech of protesting wood and a small shatter of a loose pane of glass, The window shuddered, and then, blessedly, slid upwards a few precious inches. Marley immediately stuck his nose out, barking furiously into the night air, then looked back at Helen, urging her on. Working together, one pushing, the other pulling and nudging, they managed to open the window wide enough. Getting Helen with her walker through that opening and onto the sloping, unfamiliar surface of the porch roof in the smoke and darkness was a feat of almost unimaginable difficulty. Marley went first, scrambling out with an agility that belied the urgency, then turned back, whining, pawing at the windowsill, his entire being focused on encouraging Helen. Helen, driven by a primal will to survive and an absolute trust in her dog, somehow managed to maneuver her walker partway out. Then, with Marley tugging at the sleeve of her nightgown with an almost human desperation, and her own adrenaline-fueled effort, she half tumbled, half slid out of the window, landing in a painful, awkward heap on the surprisingly solid tin roof. She lay there for a moment, gasping for cleaner air, her body bruised and trembling. Marley was instantly by her side, licking her face, whining softly, his warm body a reassuring pressure against hers. But he didn't let her rest. He knew they weren't truly safe yet. The heat from the fire burning fiercely just below them was already making the tin roof uncomfortably warm. He moved to the edge of the roof, the section closest to the front lawn, and began to bark again. Not the frantic, high-pitched barks of a trapped animal, but deep, resonant, booming alarm barks. A continuous, powerful summons designed to carry across the dark, silent fields to the nearest sign of human life. He barked and barked, a lonely, courageous sentinel silhouetted against the terrifying, swirling orange and black of the consuming fire, while Helen, coughing uncontrollably, clung to the peak of the roof, watching in numb horror as flames began to erupt from the windows of what had been her home for a lifetime. It was Josiah Abernathy, the owner of the neighboring cattle ranch a good quarter-mile down the county road, who was the first to respond. A notoriously light sleeper, a habit ingrained from years of fending off coyotes and rustlers, he was awakened not by the distant glow of the fire, which was still largely obscured by a stand of pecan trees, but by the unusual, almost intelligent pattern of Marley's barking. It wasn't the territorial yapping of a farm dog, nor the excited baying of a hunting hound. It was, Abernathy would later tell the local paper, a sound that had a purpose, a desperate, undeniable call for help. He got out of bed, a grizzled man in his late 60s, pulled on his worn denim jeans and boots and grabbed his heavy-duty flashlight and his old .30-30 rifle, more out of habit than any real expectation of trouble. As he stepped onto his porch, he saw it, the angry orange blush against the night sky, the column of smoke beginning to billow upwards. Helen Carter's place. "Martha, call 911. Helen's house is on fire," he yelled to his wife, already sprinting towards his pickup truck, his two young ranch hands, awakened by the commotion, close on his heels. When Abernathy's truck roared up the long driveway to Helen's burning farmhouse, the scene that greeted him was apocalyptic. The lower floor was an inferno, flames shooting from every window, and there, precariously perched on the porch roof, coughing and clearly in distress, was Helen Carter, with Marley standing defiantly beside her, still barking, a small, indomitable figure against the backdrop of utter devastation. "Hold on, Helen, we're coming!" Abernathy yelled, his voice barely audible above the roar of the fire. He and his ranch hands quickly maneuvered an extension ladder from his truck up to the edge of the porch roof. Just as they secured it, the wail of approaching sirens signaled the arrival of the volunteer fire department from the nearby town of Fredericksburg. The firefighters, a mix of seasoned veterans and younger recruits, immediately sized up the critical situation. Two of them scrambled up the ladder, reaching Helen just as a section of the porch roof near the main house began to buckle and smolder. With a mixture of professional skill and gentle reassurance, they secured Helen and began to help her down the ladder. Marley, incredibly, refused to descend until he saw Helen safely on the ground, only then allowing one of the younger firefighters to coax him down. His fur singed, his paws clearly sore, but his spirit unbroken. Chief Arnie Henderson, no relation to the Hendersons from Lily's story, but a man of similar community standing, of the Fredericksburg VFD, watched the final stages of the rescue, his weathered face grim as he directed his crews battling the now unstoppable blaze. Later, after Helen had been checked by paramedics, miraculously suffering only minor burns, smoke inhalation, and severe shock, and was wrapped in a warm blanket in Abernathy's truck, the full story of Marley's actions began to emerge. Abernathy recounted being woken by the dog's unique, insistent barks. Helen, her voice weak but clear, described Marley waking her, his rejection of the engulfed main staircase, his clear direction to the sewing room window, his help in opening it, and his guidance onto the roof. One of the young firefighters who had been on the roof with Marley pointed out how the dog had stayed between Helen and the hottest part of the fire, as if trying to shield her even there. Chief Henderson, a man who had witnessed countless tragedies and acts of bravery in his long career, listened in silence, his expression growing from professional concern to something akin to awe. He walked over to Marley, who was now lying quietly at Helen's feet, occasionally licking her trembling hand. The chief knelt down, looked the Labrador in the eyes, and then simply shook his head slowly. "Ma'am," he said to Helen, his voice rough with emotion. "I've been fighting fires in this county for over 30 years. I've seen people do brave things, seen animals do surprising things, but what this dog of yours did tonight, it ain't just training. He assessed a dynamic, lethal threat. He identified an unconventional escape route. He communicated that plan to you under extreme duress. He got you to safety. And then he called for help in the only way he knew how. That Labrador," the chief paused, looking for the right words. "That dog didn't just act on instinct, that was a genius act. A damned miracle. He's the reason you're alive tonight, no question about it." The farmhouse, Helen's repository of a lifetime of memories with Joe, was a total loss, a smoldering ruin by sunrise. But Helen Carter was safe, her life spared by the extraordinary intelligence, courage, and unwavering devotion of Marley. The community, heartbroken by Helen's loss but uplifted by her miraculous survival, rallied around her. A fund was started, offers of temporary then permanent housing poured in, and Marley, the hero of the hour, was lavished with affection, stakes, and the undying gratitude of an entire town. His story, the tale of the deaf grandma trapped by a raging inferno and the Labrador whose genius act was indeed a miracle, became a cherished legend in the Texas Hill Country, a powerful testament to the unbreakable bond between humans and their canine companions. It was a story that reminded everyone that even in the face of devastating loss and terrifying danger, love, loyalty, and an animal's incredible capacity for intelligent action could shine through, a beacon of hope in the darkest night. Helen, resettled in a small, comfortable cottage provided by the community, would often sit on her new porch with Marley by her side and tell anyone who would listen, her voice filled with a quiet, profound wonder, "He's more than a dog. He's my miracle. He's my lab of love." Marley's astonishing display of intelligence, courage, and unwavering loyalty in the face of a terrifying inferno is a profound testament to the extraordinary capabilities of our canine companions. He didn't just follow his training. He innovated, strategized, and executed a life-saving plan that left seasoned firefighters in awe. His genius act was, in every sense of the word, a miracle. If this incredible story of Helen and her heroic Labrador Marley has touched your heart and deepened your appreciation for the amazing animals who share our lives, please show your support for these narratives of courage and connection. Click that like button to celebrate Marley's bravery. Share this inspiring tale of survival with your friends, family, and anyone who needs a reminder of the good in this world. And most importantly, if you haven't already, please subscribe to Lab of Love and ring that notification bell. We are committed to bringing you more true stories that showcase the most unbelievable and heartwarming bonds between humans and their devoted Labradors. We are truly inspired by stories like this, and we know they resonate with you too. What part of Marley's heroic actions impressed you the most? Was it his quick thinking to find an alternative escape route, his courage on the burning roof, or his persistence in barking for help? Share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Your engagement helps our Lab of Love community thrive and allows us to continue sharing these unforgettable tales.